We'll move on to the presentation sessions by the resource persons of today's event, Dr. D.R. Krishna sir, followed by Dr. S.S. Akli sir. Of the event, Dr. D.R. Krishna sir, who is passionate about teaching, mentoring and exploration. He was graduated and later acquired his post-graduation and PG diploma in applied statistics from Andhra University. He attained his doctorate from Kakatiya University and postdoc from Margaret Fisher Bosch Institute of Clinical Pharmacology, Germany. Dr. Krishna sir served as successful academician in various organizations like NIMS and Kakatiya University. He also played key roles such as CEO and Vice President at Mallinckrodt Pharmaceutical, Missouri State. At present, Sir is working for Success Pharma Isha Therapeutics LLC, USA as Senior Scientific Advisor. He was a recipient of several prestigious awards for his outstanding contributions in the area of research. Sir have delivered lectures in various conferences across the globe. To his credit, Sir have attained more than 10 patents and published about 200 articles in peer-reviewed journals. He also mentored 25 doctorates and 60 postgraduates. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to hear from our esteemed guest. We cordially invite Dr. D.R. Krishna sir to share his valuable insights and experiences.
Good morning to you all. I'm happy it is still morning. Probably in 45 minutes from now it's going to be noon. We are running about 45 minutes late, I believe. I am extremely delighted to be here this morning at the Mallinckrodt campus. And thank you so much, Dr. Sudhakar and the other principals of the Mallinckrodt Colleges of Pharmacy, the organizers, and including the faculty of Pharmacy Institute. And it's nice to see one of my former colleagues, Dr. Reddy, with whom I worked for almost like 2.5 decades in Warangal, and also Dr. Kerry and many others. Before I jump right into the topic of my discussion today, let me say a few words about the young lady who was here serving the society in a very humble way. She was too shy to express what she has been doing. In fact, I had the opportunity of visiting the facility myself a couple of weeks ago, and I thought she richly deserves, some kind of support from the society. The name of the just a second. It requires, the finger touch. I'll come. It doesn't work on password. I had to do my finger. About Vinila, who was introduced and who was given away a check by Mallinckrodt institutions of 25,000 rupees. She is a very humble worker. She is running a dog shelter. I don't say it's a dog shelter, it's a dog rehabilitation center. And this shelter has about 100 dogs, all are stray dogs. They are not just stray dogs, not healthy stray dogs. They are dogs with all kinds of disabilities, injuries, wounds, and some of them are pretty much like open, and she is treating them like, small kids. And her background. She is a pharmacist. She is a pharmacy graduate, and she has chosen this path, and she made her father also work with her, who is an ex-Air Force guy, and together they have been doing this humble job with minimal, support from the society. Until that point of time, I was always thinking that stray dogs are bad, and whenever I go for my morning walk here, that's what I have been doing here during my holidays in Hyderabad, whenever I come back from the US. Whenever I see a stray dog, I detest. I'm scared. And many people I have seen carrying big sticks, because some of them do bite, or sometimes at least they bark at you vigorously. And I didn't know why they are barking so badly. Are they crazy, or are they rabid? Do they require some kind of treatment immediately? But later I realized, when I went to her shelter, All the dogs are inside. They were all being fed at the time. And she opened the gates. I got really scared and I thought all of them would jump at me. But they were so calm. And they all came and they were licking and she was hugging them, and even I tried to touch them and they didn't do anything bad. The only difference between the dogs that we see straying on the streets versus the dogs I see here in the farm are, these dogs do not have hunger. She is just feeding them. She is just giving them treatment. So why do stray dogs behave like that? It's because they are hungry. They are thirsty. So let us be a little more humane. Let us be a little more sensible. We cannot just get rid of all the animals that are around us. And I thought the minimum that we could do is, try to strengthen her hands, support her in some form, and let's all do it. And that to be proud that a fellow pharmacy graduate like you or like me, has been doing it. So I think whatever time I spent talking about her is worth it. So please remember, it doesn't have to be her foundation or her dog shelter. It can be anywhere. And if at all you are further interested, you can contact her. She will give the information, and you can certainly visit there, and you can see how she is handling the dogs, particularly those which are wounded and deceased. So give me a second. I will activate my laptop, and then we can continue with today. My post-graduation, I joined as a teacher, taught in a pharmacy school for a year, and then moved to Kakatiya University, where I worked almost like 30 years. And then in 2007, I left for the US and switched gears and jumped right into the pharma industry, working in pharma R&D as a fellow in the beginning, and then I grew up in the same organization. I was working with the same organization all these 16, 17 years. And later, very recently, I took voluntary retirement, and I have been continuing as a faculty. So my humble request to you all is, I don't discourage you to not to use your mobile phones, but give them some rest, at least for 1 hour. And then 1 more hour when Dr. Apte speaks. Then you have plenty of time. And you all know that artificial intelligence has been gaining a lot of popularity these days. I think all of you are aware, like he was mentioning ChatGPT. Likewise, there are so many software things or so many artificial intelligence things or media around us. And one of those is your smartphone. Don't forget. The cell phone you are having is also an artificial intelligence device. And unfortunately, human beings, we create some things and we become addicts to those, or we become slaves to those. So every one of us has become a slave to an artificial intelligence device, and at some point of time in future, they dictate us every moment of our day-to-day life. So please be cautious about it. Give them some rest so that you don't become totally dependent on it. And today I decided to speak a little bit about the story of drug. That is how the drugs are discovered and how they are developed. And one very big challenge I have today in front of me is that I have quite a heterogeneous group. I believe that there are undergrad students, BPharm students, and there are MPharm students, PharmD students, PhD students. So there cannot be a more heterogeneous crowd than this. And so, I am really, I don't know how to go about, particularly in terms of science, because it requires a lot of understanding of so many concepts that you are going to acquire or learn during your undergrad as well as postgraduate program. So what I would try to do is, sometimes I ignore my slides. I will advance them. I will just give a story. I will give some kind of information. Most of it is related to, what is happening in the entire world with regards to the development of drug discovery and development, how new drugs come into the market, and how as a young scientist, you are all aspiring, you have joined this organization, this school of pharmacy, in order to learn something. What for? Not to do an IT job, you are going to be a professional in the field of pharmaceutical science and contributes in some way so that you are able to perform certain duties which improve the quality of life of the patient. That is the ultimate purpose. That is what the drugs are meant for. So your principal, Dr. Sudhakar, was telling about how many diseases are there. There are so many diseases, right? Do you have any idea how many diseases are known or how many have been more or less characterized? About 20 to 30,000 diseases are known so far. 20 to 30,000 diseases, which includes everything. Okay, coronary artery disease or kidney disease or cancers and so on and so forth. So about 20 to 30,000 diseases. And we have treatments available for about 1/3 of them, like around say 7 to 8,000 diseases or maximum 10,000 diseases we have. Some are the other kind of treatment, either to completely alleviate or completely cure or even help with this improving the quality of life of the patient. And is it a big challenge or not? It is. We still have to discover drugs. We still have to come out with the new treatments for about 20,000 drugs. That is a challenge. Remember, that is also an opportunity for you. So you still have so many diseases in front of you. As a scientist, pharmaceutical scientist, you can find remedies, you can discover remedies for nearly 20,000 diseases in the future. So more and more kinds of cancers, more and more kinds of diseases called as the orphan diseases or rare diseases. A small defect in the genetic code could result in a disease, and there are no drugs for those. People are dying. And so there is an enormous opportunity in front of you. So you have challenges on one hand and opportunities on the other. Let us see what they are. And before we go into that, my entire focus initially is going to be about data, about some statistics. Statistics is the backbone of science. And unfortunately in India, right from my own undergraduate days, during my post-graduation days, during my PhD days, even subsequently as a faculty, I always realized, if somebody asked me, how many patients are there suffering from tuberculosis in this country? Do you have any idea? Can you just tell me how many patients are there suffering from a particular kind of cancer, like non-small cell lung carcinoma, or for that matter any other disease? So if you do not have that information, the statistical information, then you will not be able to understand the problem properly. Okay, so statistics is a very important science, and that should be the basic of our learning. And statistics deal with data. So data is everything. So what is data? It can be a bunch of numbers, so many tables, so many figures, whenever you get into internet, you have plenty of data. So is the data going to be helpful to you, useful to you? No. Data as it is, we call per se, is absolutely useless. Data is useless. Data doesn't make any sense unless you are having some purpose of finding, using the data. So that is information. So if the data tells you what about it or what is that, then it is called information. What is information? So whatever data you have in front of you, if you know what it is, then it is called information. And if you know how it works, how the data works, it is called knowledge. So what the data is information, how it works is knowledge, and there is one more, why that particular data, why it is acting that way is wisdom. So don't be overwhelmed by data all around you. Try to understand what that data is, and then try to understand how it works, and then finally you use your mental aptitude, understand but better, and know why the data exists and why a particular observation is like this. When I am mixing this chemical and that chemical, why I am getting this? That leads to something beyond knowledge, and we call that wisdom. So this is very important. Therefore, lack of statistics is to hide inconvenient facts. Okay, Now I am going to give you some statistics, some data which I think are important, are useful to us. Why? Because unless you know what kind of diseases that our society is suffering from, we are suffering from, how can you as pharmaceutical scientists tomorrow going to contribute to the discovery or development of new drugs? So we'll start with one of the richest countries in the world and most advanced, and the country which has the largest number of drug discoveries happening and largest number of patents, largest number of pharmaceutical companies, richest pharmaceutical companies, is United States of America, where you could see that the incidence of different diseases which are causing death. So what are the diseases that kill Americans? As you could see, the number one disease is heart disease, number two is cancer, three is chronic lower respiratory disease, and you see only 5.7% are dying from respiratory diseases. Respiratory diseases, that is diseases of the lung. But number one killer is always the heart disease, cardiovascular. Number two is cancer today. And then you have rest of the diseases. And you also notice there is one disease called Alzheimer's disease. Okay, this is a very important disease. You know what Alzheimer's disease is. I am not going into the details. So that is also a cause of death, not just forgetfulness. Don't think Alzheimer's disease causes forgetfulness, but it can be a devastating disease that can cause death. And now let us come back to India. So what are the diseases which are causing death in India? So the top 10 diseases, number one is interestingly again heart disease, like in the United States. Number two is lung disease, and the percentage is about 10%. And you have rest of the diseases, and there are no statistics on cancer. And when I skimmed through the literature and I found about 10% is the incidence of cancer that is causing death. So cancer is increasing in this country very, very much, and probably 10 is still a smaller number. So tomorrow when you think of discovering, or whenever you are joining a drug discovery team, and if you are asked to develop new drugs, so your focus should be based on what kind of diseases that we are suffering from. Once upon a time, Indians were dying because of diarrhea, bronchitis, tuberculosis, large numbers, and those numbers are coming down. This is because we have got excellent antibiotics for all these diseases, infectious diseases. So death due to infections in India is coming down. And other diseases which we call as the lifestyle diseases. What is lifestyle diseases? The kind of lifestyle you have, how much time you are sitting in front of the TV, like what we call a couch potato. Okay, sitting all the time eating potato chips, or eating cake, eating all kinds of refined sugars, and increasing this belly size all the time. And we are prone to developing diseases like heart attack and then stroke, etc. And we also have the problem with diseases like lung disease because of enormous pollution that we are seeing in places like Hyderabad or other places. So infectious diseases are coming down. Diabetes has increased by 35% in India. Now almost every household has got at least one or two diabetic patients. People who cross 35, they are known to be suffering from diabetes. And now coming back to the pharmaceutical industry. So let me see a comparison between India versus multiple other countries. We have India, Latin America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and in the list you have Northern America, which includes US and Canada mainly. If you compare these two, the compound annual growth rate. So how are we performing in terms of growth? How India is performing in terms of pharmaceutical growth? You could compare it with the United States and Canada, and interestingly, India is number one. So if you want to know how the pharmaceutical industry is advancing compared to the developed countries like United States, India happens to be number one. That means there is enormous amount of growth in terms of the pharmaceutical manufacturing and supply of drugs to the entire world. This is something really great, isn't it? It's very encouraging. So India is doing so great. But let us see, what's happening. Now let us see what Indian pharmaceutical industry is doing. It is one of the fastest growing, and India's contribution is 2% or 2.4% in terms of revenue. So if you consider entire global revenue $100, so $2.4 is India's contribution. And then in terms of volume, it's more than 20%. Isn't it really interesting? It is real weird because we are contributing 20% in terms of volume, and what we are getting is only 2% revenue. And what could be the reason for that? Did you ever think about it? We are saying that India has been contributing so much in terms of pharmaceutical industry, supplying a lot of drugs. At the same time, what we are earning, what India is earning in terms of revenue is only 2.4%. And that is the reason why when you join any pharmaceutical industry tomorrow, you are not going to get highly paid. You are not going to get a lot of money for the employment. Compared to even countries like United States, where the annual growth which I showed earlier is not so much as aggressive as in India, yet they are paid very heavily. What is the reason for that? That means India has been producing the high volume, low value pharmaceutical products. Okay, did I make this very clear to you all? India has been developing, producing products which are high in volume but low in value. So this needs to be corrected. There is some problem somewhere. If you understand that, we should be able to address that issue. Let us see what it is. So number of approved ANDAs in the US from financial year 2009 to 2022, that is last before year, almost last year. What is ANDAs? Okay, here I have to tell, the drugs are divided into, drugs in the sense, the capsules, tablets, injectables, whatnot, all are divided into two categories, okay, in terms of regulatory submissions are concerned. Number one, new drugs and generic drugs. New drugs are also called as branded drugs. I think all of you know about it. So, the way we use the terminology in India is different from the terminology used in the entire rest of the world. In India, we call generics are also called as new drugs. As a matter of fact, generics are nothing but these are the products which are similar to the innovator's products. Okay, if you discover a new molecule, new chemical molecule, and develop it into a drug, it has a patent protection to it, and you can market it as long as your patent, is surviving, and you are going to earn a lot of money. These are called branded products. And in India, can anyone tell in this entire audience how many new drugs were discovered, new molecules were discovered, developed and introduced into the market? Anyone? Small molecules, totally new, developed by great Indian scientists, all of us, and introduced into the market. And that particular drugs, how many did we produce so far? One drug. Post-independence, 75 years post-independence, India was able to discover, develop one new molecule, and very recently another new molecule was developed here but submitted to the US FDA and got approval. I am going to tell about it later. So that is the state. So we don't have new molecules discovered here and then developed into the new drugs. And that has resulted in, heavily relying on what are called as generics. You will be surprised that 60% of the US generics are supplied by Indian companies. 60% of our consumption in the USA. Whenever I go to a pharmacy, whenever I get prescription from my physician, from my doctor, out of just curiosity and interest, when I look at the label, I will be very proud to see Dr. Reddy's Labs, or Lupin, or some other company, Sun Pharma or whatever, but these are all generics. And 100 tablets will cost $10. So where can I get revenue? If it is a new molecule, a recently introduced new molecule for the treatment of cancer, probably could cost anywhere from $1,000 to $250,000 for 10-day treatment. $250,000. And one injection could cost, our own company was manufacturing one injection, each vial was costing $45,000. Why? Because it's a new molecule, it's a new drug. Nobody has entered the market. And you are exploiting. Okay, you are encashing. And how long are you going to encash it? As long as the patent period lasts. Once the patent period is over, the generic companies are going to manufacture the same thing by conducting a few studies called bioequivalence studies. They are going to launch. So our companies in India, like Dr. Reddy's, Aurobindo, Lupin, Sun, you mention any name, Torrent, any of these companies, Cadila, Zydus, all these companies have been doing extremely well. Doing what? Developing generics. What are generics? I am not belittling, I am not saying anything negative about any of these companies. They are great. Because even in the US, 90% of the population would love to use generic formulations, generic drugs, because they are cheap. But if you want a drug for a special disease condition, a special cancer or a special aging problem or a special metabolic disorder, you do require something that really is not there, and your generic drug probably doesn't work. So coming back here, 2022, US FDA has given approval for 722 generic drugs. These are called as ANDAs. That's a regulatory word, abbreviated new drug application. The FDA gives approval. And these, out of these, do you know how many Indian companies have bagged? 355. No, it is a huge contribution by the Indian companies. But unfortunately, that's not going to give us a lot of money because these are generics. So these are the companies: Zydus, Aurobindo, Sun, Lupin, Dr. Reddy, Cipla, Torrent. I think Dr. Carey was telling in his remarks that India has been doing great in terms of vaccine. Yes. India is going to be one of the greatest destinations for the vaccine manufacturing and production, supply to the world. According to the most recent statistics, India is producing 60% of the world's requirement, global demand. 60% of the vaccines that the world consuming, they are manufactured within India. It's really a proud moment to celebrate. Yeah, it deserves. And 50% of the generics that are used in the US are coming from Indian manufacturers. So either manufactured within India or Indian companies. If you go to New Jersey, while introducing me, I worked in New Jersey. I was in New Jersey only for 2 years, but I have been elsewhere in Missouri for almost 14 years, and presently I am living in Texas. But New Jersey is a pharmaceutical capital of United States, where you have several hundreds of pharmaceutical companies, all top companies. They are located there, including many Indian pharmaceutical companies, Aurobindo, etc. They have started their own manufacturing facilities in the New Jersey area, and they are contributing. And you can see how many approvals for each of them have been getting, Zydus, Aurobindo, Sun, etc. during a short span of time. So the bottom line is, now if somebody asks you tomorrow, so everyone says India is pharmacy of the world. Okay, it is nice to know that. But what kind of contribution are we doing? We are contributing in terms of generic drugs, not only for Indian consumption, but also for other countries in the world, including United States, European countries, and so on. But that's not enough. Particularly, from our side, I am 60 plus. For me, my days are over. Likewise, Dr. Apte, maybe he is not 60, I don't know, or he is, right? Yeah, his hair is grayer than mine, and even he crossed 60. So, but for you, no. Don't be satisfied. Don't be satisfied with the words I just mentioned. India is great. India has been, world's vaccine capital. India has been world's generic supplier. If you are satisfied, then you don't have any job to do. Go home. Unless you challenge yourselves, unless you know what is required for the future, based on the initial information I have given, what are the diseases that are bothering us, what are the new medications that you are supposed to work on, and you should know how to work on, then, you are going to be, participate in the world's competition. You will be surprised. Now, I'm there in the US and working last 16, 17 years in different companies, and now advising multiple startup companies and so on. I am really thrilled to see so many Indian faces. Several young people, come over there, and most of the great discoveries that are happening, they're happening in the hands of the Indian scientists. It's Indian, Chinese, or American. In the US, this kind of discrimination never exists. We don't care, where the individual comes from. But what is important is everyone contributing, in the development of new drugs. That is what we are going to talk about in the next few slides, and some of these could be a little more deeper in terms of science. Please excuse me for that. I will try to make it as simple as possible, and I will skip the details, and those who are interested to know more, at the end I am going to give you the email, and you can ask any questions later. So drug discovery development is like searching a needle in the haystack. In a big haystack, grass, there is a needle inside. How are you going to get it out? So this poor donkey, was trying to probe it using its mouth, and the needle got stuck. So whenever we search for something, we have got to use our intelligence, whether it is natural or artificial. It doesn't matter, preferably natural. And if your natural intelligence doesn't work, you rely on your artificial intelligence, your smartphone or anything like that, to resolve your problem. Okay, there is a temple nearby, or there is a mosque near your house, and you want to go there, and you use your Google to find it out. You never care to ask anybody, where the temple is. And that Google takes you, to a cattle farm. Now, this has happened many times. So, be cautious about it and try to make use of, the right kind of devices, right kind of skills. So, the bottom line is, I think one of the speakers before me was talking about acquiring skills. I think one of the principles. So, acquiring skills is the bottom line. What is a skill? Is skill knowledge? Knowledge and skill both are one and the same. Hard work and knowledge and skill all are one and the same. Skill is not knowledge. Skill is the ability of utilizing your knowledge. What you have learned from your teachers, what you have learned from your colleagues, and what you have learned from your students. During 30 years of my tenure as a teacher there, and now as an adjunct faculty or professor, I continue to learn a lot from there, not from here to there. Several times it happens from there to here. Teachers do learn a lot from the students. How? When you ask intelligent questions. So skill is something where you are going to utilize the ability of transforming your knowledge into something that gives a solution. That is skill. For your information, where I am working in the organization, probably it is happening even here these days. Nobody is going to look at your degree certificate. I am PhD from IIT, who cares? I am PhD from Mallinckrodt College of Pharmaceutical Sciences. Or M.Pharm from Mallinckrodt College. I am PharmD from Mallinckrodt College of Pharmacy. And somebody says, I am M.Pharm from NIPER. I don't care. I was hiring a lot of, employees, director level, associate director level, principal scientist level, fellow level, and we never care, what kind of certificate you carry with you, but what we care about is what kind of skills that you have. How do we know that? How do we know that somebody possesses these skills or not? Discussing with you and giving an opportunity to show what you know. And if required, we will take recommendation letters or recourse. Recourse not written like, he is great, he is number one in the first rank in the class. We don't care about ranks. So knowledge that is transformable into something that can be seen into a product is called skill, and try to acquire that. Don't care about your percentages. Don't care about your ranks. Okay, this I am telling having worked here in this country more than 30 years as a teacher. So that is very important. And what it takes to develop a new drug. Say you want to develop a new drug. So how are you going to do that? And you are going to be part of a team. And in such a situation, first of all, realize drug discovery development is an extremely risky process. And it requires coordination of people from different disciplines. Don't think that drug discovery development is done by pharmacy graduates. No. Pharmacy graduates contribute. Pharmacologists contribute. Biologists contribute. Molecular biologists contribute. Pure chemists contribute. People from all walks of science. Medical people contribute. Okay, engineering people contribute. All these are responsible for discovering and developing a new drug. So if pharmacists think that we are the bosses of drugs, no, sorry, you are not. But you will have greater role, perhaps in a bigger role or a better role in the development of drugs. But you are not the only ones. And then, drug discovery is extremely risky. And it is possible that you may commit mistakes. And mistakes can be quite expensive. And there can be a lot of failures. Somebody was telling, if I have $1 billion in my pocket, what am I going to do? The last thing I would do is doing drug discovery. And instead I will go for a horse race and bet on a horse that is limping. So that means such is the level of risk that you have in drug discovery and development. Unless you use intelligence processes and in people with intelligent application of skills, it is difficult to move forward with drug discovery. So we have started discovering drugs not today, times immemorial. Traditionally, folklore medicine, people learned a lot of, the treatments based on their experiences. And then empirical, based on science, molecular, herbal cues, minerals, and so on and so forth. And people have been trying. And for your information, most of the drugs that we have been using until yesterday, they were based on the molecules that were there in the nature. Tubocurarin. Tubocurarin. People used to hunt deer, dipping the tip of the arrow in curare, which is taken in a bamboo tube. That is why the name was given tubocurarin. It's a skeletal muscle relaxant, and it can cause death. And several molecules with the same pharmacophore, same pharmaceutical chemical structure have been developed, analogs. Quinine, quinidine, and several other molecules have been used as the starting compounds, and many new molecules were developed. But today, we are no longer using those methods. We are trying to use molecular biology techniques, and we are using advanced genomic approach, and so on. And there is a distinct difference between drug discovery and development. Both are not one and the same. Drug discovery is only up to a certain stage, and afterwards you call it drug development. Okay? So, from concept to the molecule, and drug development is from molecule to the registered product. And then you are going to commercialize the product. So, if you look at this, so you are going to first identify towards which particular disease you want to develop a drug. Let us assume that you are starting a pharmaceutical company and you want to develop new drugs. And how are you going to begin? So first thing is, for what disease I am going to develop a drug. I want to develop a drug for cancer. What cancer? My grandfather died of the lung cancer. So I was so upset when he died. So there are not many drugs for treatment of lung cancer, so I want to develop drugs for lung cancer. So that is what is called the therapeutic concept. So are you sure that you want to develop a drug for lung cancer? Yes. And then you are going to select a target. What is a target? Anybody? Target? Target means whenever you take a drug, what happens to it? It goes into your body, gets into the bloodstream, and from the bloodstream, it goes to the place where things have gone wrong. Okay, lung cancer, what has gone wrong? Your lungs. There is a tumor inside the lung. So the drug molecule has to go there and do something, some miracle to the tumor, and the tumor dies and the patient survives. So there is something within the tumor that takes up the drug, and that something which takes the drug is called the target. Usually it is a protein, sometimes it can be a gene, or it can be any other macromolecule. Macromolecule means big molecule, so mostly a protein. So your drug molecule goes and binds with that particular target protein, and then the target protein, which is responsible for causing the disease, will undergo some change, and it produces relief. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, avoiding the too technical terms. And then this target protein, once you identify, then you are going to validate it, and then you are going to, screen several hundreds of thousands of chemical molecules, and then you choose those molecules which can bind sorry, bind with the drug molecule, with the target, and produce the required relief. And those molecules which are binding with the target, they are called leads, and you are going to identify the lead, and then you validate it, and then you are going to perform certain animal studies. We call them preclinical development, and then you will do studies in the human beings. We call the clinical development. And this leads to the regulatory approval. You are going to submit all this information to the regulatory agencies. In India, you call it as a Drug Control Authority, DCGI, and in the US it is called as US FDA. And after approval, the product is going to be launched onto the market. So drug discovery, there are multiple stages. I'm not going into those details today. And I also mentioned what a biological target is. There are different kinds of targets. Since how many of you have already studied pharmacology? Okay, so thank you. So those of you who have studied pharmacology, I think you know what a receptor is, what an ion channel is, what a carrier-mediated system is or carrier transporter is, and then what the enzymes are. Drugs act through all these kinds of macromolecules. We call them as enzymes or carrier transporters or ion channels, etc. And the molecules you develop, they are expected to bind with them. Okay. So this is how the target and drug molecule interaction looks like. So the small molecules that you are synthesizing, the pharmaceutical chemistry people are synthesizing several molecules, and each of them is capable of binding, but only a few of them are able to bind perfectly with the specificity as well as the sensitivity, and that results in improved performance of that particular target protein, and that is going to be your possible lead. And I'm skipping some of these smaller details. So this is how you grossly develop a drug. Number one is you decide your disease, what disease you are interested to develop a drug for, and then you choose the target, a macromolecule, a protein, or something like that, and you develop bioassays, and then you identify the leads and take those leads for transforming into a drug molecule. So you are going to run a lot of evaluations, preclinical evaluations, and then you are going to do clinical development, and this clinical development is done in multiple phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. So phase 1 is in healthy subjects normally. Phase 2 studies are performed in patients who are having the disease but smaller numbers. And phase 3 large number clinical trials. And phase 4 after the approval studies. So my job in the industry was starting from phase 1, 2, 3 and 4, the clinical part, designing how you are going to run a clinical study, because most of the failures occur, costly failures occur in the clinical trials phase. So I will go to that point and try to summarize my talk today. First of all, I also want to tell something else. This is called rare diseases. Rare diseases are orphan diseases. These are not classical diseases like simple cardiovascular disease or a simple cancer and so on. So where the incidence of the disease is so small, only 200,000 patients are there in the entire United States. So such a disease is called as an orphan disease or a rare disease. Likewise in India too, there are certain diseases which are affecting a very small number of patients. These are called as orphan diseases or rare diseases. So in the entire world, there are about 7,000 such diseases. And 50% of people affected by these rare diseases, they are going to die. 30% of them are going to die, before they reach even age 5. That means young babies, they are born with some kind of defect. And that defect is seen only in about 1 lakh of people in the entire country. Only 1 lakh patients. So such a rare disease. I have seen a child, an infant in the US, and this baby is, the baby is daughter of one of my former students, and they visited us, and the baby is hardly a couple of months, and she doesn't have lenses, and she doesn't have 50% of the brain. But she has suckling reflexes and she is able to drink milk. She is just drinking milk. And she doesn't have lenses, therefore there is no chance of looking the world at all. And since 50% of the brain is not there, not developed because of a certain simple genetic defect, there is no treatment. So today, the most challenging area for the young scientists, for you, is to come out with solutions of this kind, like orphan diseases or the rare diseases. As I told, there are 7,000 diseases identified so far, and we have some kind of medication available only for 10% of them. That means only 700 rare diseases today have some kind of treatment. So there is an immense potential for developing drugs in the rare diseases area. Okay, I'll skip the approval process, how the drugs are approved, and we will go straight into about Indian pharmaceutical scenario. So this is very important for all of you, particularly for the teachers and for the senior students. What happened to drug discovery development in India? Why it has not come up to the level of expectation? I think I am going to tell you a story. In 1992 or so, 1992, I think, the first drug discovery company appeared in this country, in this state, in this city. Do you know what that company is? Dr. Reddy's Research Labs. They established a foundation called Dr. Reddy's Research Foundation. And they were working on multiple therapeutic areas, and the most important therapeutic area is diabetes. Diabetes with dyslipidemia. That means simultaneously they have high cholesterol and also diabetes, high sugar. And this particular drug, has this kind of chemical structure, and it was called DRF2593. That is Dr. Reddy's Research Foundation, DRF. The number, and it was also given a name called Malla. I think Surya knows about it. It is called Malla. And this particular drug was developed here in Hyderabad. First drug in the entire country, first new molecule. Of course, prior to that, CDRI developed a female contraceptive drug, And that female contraceptive, non-steroidal contraceptive drug, which was approved and supplied freely even today, it is supplied with the names called Saheli. Some of you may be aware of that. And unfortunately, that particular drug did not undergo clinical trials properly. But still, it was being launched. But the first molecule that was synthesized and tried, completed phase 1 trial, clinical phase 1 trial, was this balaglitazone, DRF 2593. And 96 it was discovered, and they conducted some studies and outsourced it to a company in Denmark. And that company was doing phase 2 trials, and around that time they realized that this molecule has got lot of toxicity. It can cause cancer in the bladder of animals. So immediately the product development was stopped. So whatever development that took place until that point of time was totally killed. And then the same thing happened with so many companies. Each color represents one company here. So not that India did not try. India did try. Multiple companies started drug discovery, starting from Alchem, Zubilant, Hetero, Panacea, Natco, Suven, Archid, Reliance, Lupin, Glenmark, blah blah blah. Dr. Reddy is at the bottom, the first company to start that. And then what happened, you see, there is an exponential growth of companies starting drug discovery. That is, they were increasing. But then what happened? It reached a peak, then they started coming down. They started closing down. And Dr. Reddy's Research Foundation was closed in 2009. Just 1 year before, 2008, Ranbaxy closed their discovery. Where is Dr. Reddy's Research Foundation now in Hyderabad? Doesn't exist. I was there many times. I interacted with many scientists in those days. And it was flourishing with a lot of activity. So many drugs were being discovered. And later, they changed everything, and they moved the discovery path to Bangalore. And it is something else today. And one by one, all of these companies have stopped or closed their shops, just because the drug discovery was found not to be very lucrative. It requires more investments. And many of them, or maybe some of them, preferred horse racing is better than drug discovery. So they went to the horse races. And then they didn't stop there. Around the same time, when people started closing down these pharmaceutical companies, that they haven't closed everything. They closed the discovery development, the new drug discovery. But the generics continued, and generics are flourishing, and they are supplying to the entire world. And around that time, some small biotech companies started appearing. And these companies are now increasing in number. Their focus is entirely on the drug discovery part. So young scientists like you can think of joining hands with some of these companies. Some of them are doing extremely well. And one of them is Edwinus at the bottom. It is still there. They are doing here a lot of work. And there is one company called Ryzen, RHIZEN, so Ryzen. And this particular company was established by, one of my student, he worked at Dr. Reddy's for a lot of time, and then, he started this company here and then moved to Switzerland. And this was headed by one of, former Andhra University pharmacy students. And this company has been developing a lot of drugs for anti-cancer drugs. And in 2013, Zydus Cadila has come out with the first successful new chemical entity. They discovered the molecule, and that is the only drug which was launched. And the cost of each tablet is just 25 rupees. So compare it with $500 I just mentioned. So in this country, when it was first launched in 2013 with the trade name called Lipaglyn, maybe you can Google it, Lipaglyn, and read the story of Lipaglyn. See, the scientists who worked here at Dr. Reddy's, they contributed further at Cadila, and they successfully came out with this molecule. And this particular drug is called Saraglitazar, and the trade name is Lipaglyn, is the one which successfully completed entire development program, and that is the only drug which was successfully developed here for submission here. Okay, so just an idea for you, 70 to 90% of the drug development costs are incurred during the clinical trials. That means for developing a new molecule, the approximate cost today is $2.5 billion. If you want to have a new molecule on the market, starting from the synthesis part, that is called discovery part, lead generation, optimization, preclinical studies, and then clinical studies, how much you have to spend? $2.5 billion. And what is the time you require for developing a new drug? Is about 10 to 15 years. So that is the kind of time investment and money investment you need to have for developing new molecules. And for these are the costs of the clinical trials, approximate clinical trials. For developing a new drug for a respiratory condition, you require $115 million average. So expensive are the costs in the development. So what is going wrong in today's drug discovery development program? The main problem is that we are working with more and more compounds and huge increase in the novel targets, and then the failure at the phase 3 trials, clinical trials. After completing successfully all the clinical trials and after launching the product on the market, don't think that you are successful yet. There can be problems even at that stage. Remember, you completed all the trials, phase 3 trials, and you got approval from the agencies, and you have launched the product onto the market, and then something can go bad, something can go wrong, and you may have to get the product back. And it happened. How? So the first new chemical entity discovered by Indian scientists, that is Ryzen. You can go and Google it again to get more information on this. Ryzen, RHIZEN, I told you, it's initially started by Andhra University Pharmacy graduate who did his PhD and then worked at Glenmark for many years as head of R&D. He started this organization, and in collaboration with Alembic, they started further development in the oncology space, and it was a great drug, and that was being used for treating follicular lymphoma as a cancer, and successfully submitted, and the approval was given by US FDA in 2021. 2021, this product was approved for treating, and they were getting a lot of money on the product. But 2020 June, the product was withdrawn. Just 1 year, the product was there on the market, and within that 1 year, it had to be withdrawn just because of the fact that it was causing serious adverse effects, and sometimes the patients are dying. Okay, the patient is not dying because of the cancer for which he or she is being treated, but it is because of the toxicity of the drug. So what happens when the toxicity is more and people are dying? FDA withdraws the approval and the product was removed from the drug. Okay, let me not go into the science anymore. We were talking about artificial intelligence. Today we are using artificial intelligence. There are different platforms in various stages of drug discovery development. During the discovery phase, in the target validation, target optimization, and then all the way through clinical trials, we have used artificial intelligence for making clinical study designs. And today you can think of using it too, but don't give away yourself to the artificial intelligence. You always try to be the boss. Your natural intelligence should be the boss, not the artificial intelligence. Let it not dictate terms to you. So it's a kind of win-win situation. Develop artificial intelligence, but let it not rule you. Remember this. And that is what is going to happen here. So artificial intelligence is no match for natural ignorance. So remember, never try to give in to the artificial intelligence totally. Yeah, we were talking about the academia-industry relationship. You will be surprised to know that in the US, every year, the number of contracts that are being made between academic institutions and the industry are anywhere around 200 to 250 billion dollars. So more than 60% of the drugs, the initial contributions are made by the academicians, the scientists working in academia, universities. So we have plenty of such examples. And in the end, I would like to give you a couple of tips. You can have a wide variety of choices, whether you want to work in basic research or preclinical research or clinical regulatory research. You can decide which area is more appealing to you, medicinal chemistry or biology or biochemistry, pharmacology, toxicology. These are in the discovery area. Likewise, you have preclinical area and clinical. And PharmD students, don't think PharmD is the end of your road. Okay, after completing PharmD, don't think that you are done with everything. I have so many people working in the industry with basic PharmD degree as well as PharmD plus PhD. And PharmD PhDs are highly sought after. They do extremely well in the area of clinical trials. Okay, remember those points. And in the end, the time is always right to do what is right. And every morning when I go around this lake for my morning walk, I always think, what is that I could do to my students? What is important to you is, you are going to get something from your teachers. And today we have a lot of information, lot of data around us. Try to be very precise. Try to identify which path chooses you. And don't think that you are unfortunate, you are different. What is required is a lot of confidence in yourself and pursue that path. There is nothing like, I am a pharmacognosy man, I am not fit for doing formulation development. I am a pharmacognosy man or a pharmaceutical chemistry man, I cannot do this. Pharmacology man, I cannot do this. These boundaries do not exist. I never thought I would end up in pharmaceutical industry. I was a teacher for 30 years and I never wanted to be anything other than a teacher. But I ended up working in an industry and I had learned a lot of things. I had to learn a lot of things in order to survive in the industry. First 6 months was almost like, climbing steep Everest. Learning a lot of things, particularly in the area of regulatory affairs. I did. And then I started growing up even in the industry. So it is always your perseverance, your interest, your zeal, and above all, your confidence in yourself. So thank you so much for patient listening. I am sorry that I was not able to give you what I really wanted to give you, particularly in the area of scientific concepts. I had to skip many things just because of the fact that the audience cross section is not really what I expected. But I hope that each one of you, starting from first year B Pharm, all the way through the PhD students and the faculty members, if you are able to get one or two tips from my today's talk, I think I am very fortunate. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for presenting the essence of drug discovery and development, challenges and opportunities. Your words have truly enriched us. Now it's time to express our gratitude. Here we have a memento, a token of appreciation. I request all the dignitaries to felicitate our honored chief guest with a memento.